Glad to have you with us on this edition of NHK Newsline. I'm Raja Pradhan with the news from Tokyo. We start with breaking news. Japan's health ministry says a woman infected with the new coronavirus has died in Kanagawa Prefecture bordering Tokyo. It's the first death of a person infected with the virus here in Japan. She was in her 80s. Once again, we have breaking news. Japan's health ministry says a woman infected with the new coronavirus has died in Kanagawa Prefecture, which borders Tokyo. It's the first death of a person infected with the virus in Japan. She was in her 80s. Now, a taxi driver in Tokyo and a doctor in western Japan have tested positive for the virus. The taxi driver is in his 70s. He reportedly says he's driven at least one customer who appeared to be Chinese. The health ministry is investigating how he became infected. The doctor in his 50s works at a hospital in Wakayama Prefecture. Officials there say the surgeon had a fever and fatigue late last month, but continued to work while taking drugs to lower his fever. He had not visited China in the 14 days before exhibiting the symptoms. Meanwhile, 44 new cases of infection have been confirmed aboard the quarantined cruise ship docked just outside Tokyo. About 3,500 passengers and crew remain confined to the Diamond Princess. But officials say passengers aged 80 and over with chronic health problems or in windowless cabins, as well as their companions, will be allowed to leave the ship starting Friday. Those who get off will then be transferred to government-designated facilities. The health ministry is asking the remaining passengers to stay in their rooms until next Wednesday, which marks the end of the 2-week quarantine period following the first confirmed case. Now, more than 1,000 crew members are on the ship, and 21 of them have been infected. In an SNS video, a man who appears to be an Indian crew member is asking New Delhi for help.
प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया मोदी जी को कहना चाहता हूँ कुछ भी करके सेग्रीगेशन करके हम लोग को सही सलामत घर पहुंचने का जो दावा कर रहा हूँ आप लोग कीजिए प्लीज.
Japan's top government spokesperson commented on how officials are providing support.
The crew members and passengers come from 56 countries and territories. We're working closely with them through their embassies in Tokyo and other diplomatic channels to address individual specific requests for medicine and other supplies. We've also been trying to give detailed explanations to each and every inquiry.
Aside from the 218 cases from the cruise ship, 31 people have tested positive in Japan, including 12 who were evacuated on chartered flights arranged by the government. Meanwhile, in the Chinese epicenter province of Hubei, authorities confirmed 242 more deaths on Wednesday, marking it the deadliest day of the outbreak. The number of people confirmed to have the virus skyrocketed by nearly 15,000 cases that day as well. The latest numbers mark a significant increase. Officials attributed the sharp rise to a change in diagnostic criteria for counting new cases. It comes after reports earlier this week the rate of infections had been stabilizing. Throughout mainland China, the death toll increased by over 250, bringing the total to 1,367. And confirmed cases now stand at nearly 60,000. Outside mainland China, the virus has infected 570 people in over 24 countries and territories. One person has died in the Philippines, another in Hong Kong, along with the woman who died in Japan. Now, there's been a shakeup in leadership of China's Communist Party in Hubei. The state-run Xinhua news agency is reporting the party's top officials for both Hubei province and the epicenter city of Wuhan have been replaced. The province and the city are battling mounting criticism over the handling of the coronavirus outbreak and particularly the initial response to the health crisis. Earlier this month, the Communist Party committee in Hubei announced the dismissal of the province's 2 top health authority officials. They were reportedly in charge of containing the outbreak in its early days. A citizen journalist in Wuhan who had criticized what he saw as the authorities' poor handling of the outbreak has gone missing.
就能看到大排长龙，得有上百人排着长长的队在等待打吊瓶、等待治疗。然后呢，打吊瓶那个屋子里面是堆满了人，不停地在那喊护士换药，护士没药了，还有很多的问题没有解决。
Chen entered the city shortly before it was closed off and began sharing observations online. The 34-year-old continued making his posts despite Beijing's information controls.
我前面是病毒，我后边是中国的法律和行政力量，我连死都不怕，我怕你共产党吗？
But his postings stopped last Thursday. His family says he hasn't answered their phone calls, and they're worried he could have been detained or forcibly isolated by authorities. For some Chinese people studying here in Japan, the situation back home is a daily source of anxiety for more than one reason. NHK World's Yao Xindu explains.
你们晚上吃的什么？
我们晚上就下一点面什么吃就什么。
21-year-old Li Chunhuan checks up on his family every day from his school dormitory in Tokyo. They live near Wuhan, the center of the coronavirus outbreak.
Only one person per household is allowed to go out. The government's controls are really strict, so Dad's the only one who can go shop. Almost all shops and restaurants are closed anyway. We have no choice but to stay home. The epidemic is really scary, so we have to follow the government's rules, like everyone else.
On top of his family, there's another concern. Lee came to Tokyo during a break in his university studies to learn Japanese at a language school. He had to return home in January before his visa expired. But he says he couldn't. After the outbreak, the Chinese government shut down public transportation and airports around Wuhan. His only option was to fly to another city in China and try to make his way there. But it would be expensive, risky, and far from certain whether he would even make it.
Here in Japan, I can't get enough information, whether the situation is still serious or improving over there.
Lee asked his language school for help and was advised to send a letter to the Tokyo Immigration Bureau. He explained his situation and requested a visa extension. It granted him one, but only for 30 days.
I'm a little worried, but all I can do is hope that the situation will be better in a month.
In the meantime, his school is giving him some support. It's waiving his tuition and rent.
I felt sorry for him, and his family must be in a difficult situation over there. So I wanted to do what I could. China is facing so much trouble right now. I think wanting to help someone during difficult times is natural and very important.
Lee is grateful for the opportunity, but he knows he's one of the lucky ones.
I hope people will not discriminate too much against people from Hubei, because we are also victims.
Lee knows his situation is not unique. And with no end in sight to the coronavirus crisis, he hopes more students like him who need to leave but have nowhere to go will be offered the same help. Yao Xinru, NHK World, Tokyo.
In other news, the European Union says it's decided to partially withdraw tariff preferences for Cambodia. The EU said its aim is to persuade the Cambodian authorities to put an end to human rights violations. Patsuri Raksawang at our bureau in Bangkok has the details.
The tariff preferences have been fueling the country's economic growth, but the sanctions could deal a major blow to Cambodia's garment industry, which accounts for a significant portion of the country's exports. The European Commission said on Wednesday that the measure will affect about 1/5 of Cambodia's annual exports to the EU, including garments and travel goods. Under the current trade scheme, all exports from Cambodia to the EU are duty-free except for arms. The EU had been considering trade sanctions in the wake of a crackdown on Cambodia's main opposition party by the Cambodian government. The government said it regrets the EU's decision, which it said was triggered by many misperceptions and misunderstandings about the situation in Cambodia. Turning to Australia, where firefighters say all bush and grass fires in the state of New South Wales have now been contained. The state's Rural Fire Service announced this on Twitter.
After what's been a truly devastating fire season for both firefighters and residents who've suffered through so much this season, all fires are now contained in New South Wales, which is great news. Not all fires are out. There's still some fire activity in the far south of the state, but all fires are contained, so we can really focus on helping people rebuild.
The state has battled months of bushfires this season, but heavy rain since last week and the ensuing floods have extinguished most of the fires. Meanwhile, some parts in the region are still flooded. The water level temporarily topped 1 metre at an inland town in the north of New South Wales.
Looked out there and it was like a tsunami. It wasn't even raining. It was just sprinkling and it just poured through, and we dropped the phone and everyone sprinted out to get the horses, and by the time we were in the paddock it was like chest deep.
But the flooding is welcome news to people in drought-stricken areas. A dam in Sydney is reportedly at 100% capacity. Meteorological authorities say over 700 millimetres of rain soaked the region over the past week, and that more rain is expected. People in Thailand use about 45 billion plastic shopping bags every year. The government is now planning to tackle this problem by banning plastic bags and cups by the year 2022. One initiative aimed at reducing plastic use is already attracting attention. Selling by weight. NHK World's Kema Padrot Wanitakun reports.
This store opened last August on a university campus near Bangkok. Most products here are sold by weight. Customers bring in their own containers to fill. The system has proved popular with students.
I only need to buy what I want, so it reduces food waste. I like this store.
Food stores are ubiquitous in Thailand, but what happens to all the plastic containers and bags they use? Most are thrown straight into the garbage. If that plastic ends up in the sea, animals such as dugongs and whales can mistake it for food and eat it. There have been numerous cases of animals dying as a result. Plastic pollution is an increasing threat to the marine ecosystem. Nationwide efforts have been launched to tackle the problem. Major supermarkets and other retailers stopped giving out plastic bags starting on January 1st. This shop in Bangkok also sells by weight. It has 200 products ranging from food items such as rice and nampra, the seasoning indispensable to Thai cooking, to daily necessities like soap. The owner, Bridi Chinok Jongsatian, saw her first retail store in Germany and thought Thais might like the system.
I want to reduce the amount of things that will end up as garbage.
Customers can buy just as much as they want, with the minimum quantity set at 1 gram. They can bring containers of their choice, whether it's paper bags or empty cans. The containers are weighed before the merchandise is put in, and the weight is deducted from the total when calculating the price. The method also helps cut food waste and keeps prices down because the store doesn't have to pay for packaging.
I've cut my spending by 20 to 30% because I only buy what I need. I hope shops like this will become commonplace.
I want this shop to be part of the customers' daily lives. We need to reuse things over and over as much as possible instead of just throwing everything away.
Bridi Chinok's retail model is a challenge to Thailand's throwaway culture, but Thais still have to change the mindset before it becomes mainstream. Khemapat Rodvanishkun, NHK World, Bangkok.
And that's going to wrap up our bulletin. I'm Pachari Raksawong in Bangkok.
U.S. President Donald Trump has reacted to the Philippine government's decision to end a military pact. American troops will have to stop training in the Philippines, and there'll be implications for security in the South China Sea. But Trump does not seem concerned.
I really don't mind if they would like to do that. That's fine. We'll save a lot of money.
Last month, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte told officials to review the Visiting Forces Agreement. He did that after the United States canceled the visa for a senator who's a close ally. The Philippine government told the U.S. about terminating the pact earlier this week. It's now due to expire in 6 months. American troops regularly visit the Philippines for joint exercises. That's part of an effort to counter China's growing presence in the South China Sea. The Philippine government's decision drew concern from U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper. He called it unfortunate and a move in the wrong direction. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has drawn criticism in the Diet by jeering a fellow lawmaker. The friction meant budget deliberations were pushed back to next week. Abe jeered a lawmaker from the opposition Constitutional Democratic Party. Abe later offered an explanation.
There was a stream of abusive language. She kept saying the rot starts from the head and that I was the rotting body. It was nothing to do with policies.
Opposition members urged Abe to apologize and make a retraction.
His comments violate parliamentary democracy. He deserves to be disciplined as a Diet member.
And even members of the ruling camp disapproved.
Mr. Abe is the Prime Minister of the country, after all. He'd better not become too excited.
The ruling and opposition parties agreed the Budget Committee will get down to business with intensive deliberations next Monday. Abe will start by explaining his outburst. And next is a 3D outlook on the weather for selected cities around the globe.